Yeah,
White dudes for Kamala.
God, what a terrible idea you came up with.
No.
Yeah, how'd this work?
How did it? Yeah.
Who was like, you know what we need?
Who started it?
I was in San Francisco.
Yeah. Oh,
Of course
perfect
you were.
place.
Yeah.
At a conference, and I went to, I'm not going to name him, I went to dinner with a friend who you all probably do know.
White dude?
Yes.
Okay.
At an Argentinian steakhouse.
Perfect.
And we were talking. It was right after Win with Black Women and Win with Black Men.
Yeah.
I was like, who's doing like the white dudes call? And he was like, yeah, nobody, but like people keep like asking who's doing the white dudes call. And I was like, does that mean we're doing the white dudes call? And he was like, yes. And then at the end of dinner, he was like, by the way, I actually can't do that. So it's going to be you. So I went back to my hotel room at like 9 o'clock at night and
set it up.
West Coast time, and started texting a bunch of friends, and Brad was one of the first.
Yeah.
And a bunch of people got midnight East Coast text messages from me being like, you want to do a white dude's call?
I think the actual words were, hey, crazy idea.
You up?
Hey.
Yeah. Hey,
Hey.
what you doing?
Hey. 2 a.m.
And it was literally like, crazy idea. Do you think we could pull off a white dude's call? I'm like, not a crazy idea. And yeah, let's do this.
Yeah,
and we were just in.
Why did the Shadow founder bail?
I have a guess. Why? Because he legally couldn't do it.
Because he legally couldn't do it.
Oh,
yeah.
not because he didn't want to come out as like,
No,
a white guy for Harris.
No, he definitely would have been a part of it if he could have been.
Yeah.
He would have been an excellent
White dude. Yeah.
Great. Okay, so from fantastic. We love excellent white dudes here at Twigg and
Carri
Jenkins.
Twigg in particular is a huge. She's fun.
He actually
She's
is
fond of
an
white
excellent
dudes.
white dude.
Yeah.
I just want to keep building up suspense about who this might be.
I know.
I have so many.
People
I
can
have
guess.
so many ideas. Well, there was only one white dude in our office, and he wouldn't be able to do this.
I don't remember.
I don't
who
want to
you're
name
talking
names.
about.
Do
Oh,
we
yes,
wanna-
I do.
Yeah,
Yes, I
yeah,
do.
yeah.
Do we
Of
want to
course.
play a 10 questions?
Yeah, right.
No.
Is
It's
he
okay.
single? Just for anyone
He
not
is-
curious.
He is not single.
I
I'm
also.
less interested.
It's
10 questions
better-
became
it's
one
better
question.
Moving on.
It's better that it's mysterious. It's better that we don't know.
He
You know
doesn't
what I
have a man bun.
mean? Doesn't have a man bun.
Oh,
Yeah.
definitely moving on then.
Yeah, let's move on then.
Okay, so what was the time between this dinner in San Francisco at the Argentinian steakhouse with the white man with no man bun, who shall remain nameless, and the actual call happening?
6 days.
Okay.
Yeah.
It happened really fast, and I was like at a conference and doing other work at the same time, and then on my phone being like, oh, I guess we're organizing this. People were like, what are you doing? And I was like, I don't know that I'm ready to say it out loud yet.
Yeah.
It was literally like Friday morning before the call. We had all said to each other, all right, we're going to go live with this at 11 a.m. Everyone's got until 11 a.m. to say whether we're in, we're out, whether we're going to do this or not. And if I remember correctly, me and like one other person totally blew the embargo and like went out at like 7:30 in the morning. We're like, we're doing this, let's go. And there were like a series of like angry texts of like, I thought we all were going to wait till 11. And I was like, wild card, what?
It's such a white dude thing to do.
Yeah, I
You
know.
what I mean? Like,
Brad
Jump
is
to
also,
the front and steal the shine.
how many white dude jokes can we make in this
Brad
podcast?
is also the comms guy.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So
You
I
broke
broke
your
the own embargo.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, whatever.
So typical.
Are we gonna have a white dude's joke like counter at the
Yeah,
bottom
we
of the
should. There
screen?
should be
should.
like
We
a
should.
little buzzer.
Yeah, like right here.
Was there any trepidation?
Oh yeah.
Because we've actually talked about this a lot, and I'm against it. I think in the sense of we are so comfortable on the left talking about identity so long as you're black or a woman, but we're not comfortable talking about identity if you're white and a man. And I think that that's a massive mistake that we make. And it's like, if we're going to be identity centric, which I'm willing to have a debate about, then you have to allow everyone their identity.
You're against the trepidation. You're not against
I'm against
white
the
dudes.
trepidation.
Yeah,
No,
sorry,
no,
do
no.
you want to
As
clarify?
As we've discussed many times.
Because Brad's face is
I
like,
am-
you're against
I was gonna be like, okay, this is gonna get spicy real quick. Let's do this.
Taking a turn.
No, we are for it.
As we've discussed
You're
many times,
against
I'm
the
very
trepidation.
pro white man.
Very pro-white man.
There was.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're welcome.
We love you
Yeah.
guys.
We appreciate it.
I mean, Brad and I have known each other for what, 15 years?
Do you remember that one time when we like drank
18
Columbus
years.
out of like Christmas ale? Like
No,
you, me,
obviously.
seriously, we threw this crazy after 2010 election party in Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah.
It
2010
was
was a bad year.
it was a bad
It was
year.
a bad year.
And we
It
drank
was the house party.
it was the house party.
I do remember that.
Every case of Christmas ale in Columbus,
Yeah.
Ohio
Yeah.
emptied out.
Gone.
Let's go.
Gone.
Columbus is an excellent city.
I
Yeah.
mean,
And there's a lot of Christmas ale
a
rocking
lot
in
of Christmas ale.
Columbus.
We're big believers in drinking heavily in Ohio.
So why the trepidation now? When you say the trepidation, do you mean, were you afraid of backlash from communities of color? Were you afraid of backlash from non-white men? Like what's the fear here?
Or from other types of white man.
I think like we're just not, I mean, as you said, like we're not comfortable talking about whiteness, maleness, etc.
Yeah.
And you know, there was a lot of opportunity for this to go off the rails pretty quickly.
Yeah, sure.
In either direction,
High
to be
risk.
honest.
Yeah.
Like there's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
like,
yeah.
you know, we got, I can't tell you how many messages I got from people after the fact who were like friends who work in politics who were like, I joined it to just like see if that shit went off the rails.
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
True
like or
facts.
like I hate watched it. And like
Yeah. True
honestly like I was kind of charmed by it.
Yeah.
And you know like
A lot of voyeurism.
there was.
Yes.
There was. And you
Yeah.
know what? All as we said, all were welcome.
Yeah.
So yeah, there were a lot of things that could have gone wrong, and there were a lot of internal conversations. We had these very, very deliberate conversations ahead of the call about how to do this right, about how to have this conversation, about the conversation that we wanted to actually have with the American people around masculinity, around what being a white dude was.
Yeah.
And I remember there was like a moment where I was deeply conflicted and I was like really thinking about this. And Ross came in with this amazing text message to the folks that were organizing this. He's like, look, we are the first ones on our side to really do something like this. And there's going to be heat no matter what happens, because that's what happens when you do that.
Yeah.
And we just got to be okay with not knowing. And you know what? He was right.
Yeah.
We had to be okay with the fact that whatever we were about to step into, it could go really wrong or it could go really right. And there's really no way to tell. And well, I think it went okay.
Yeah, you nailed it.
Did all right.
I think we did all right.
So as you're going through the planning, sorry if you have questions. I feel like I'm.
You're crushing it. Look, I'm off
is a bit of an area of
New York
expertise.
Mets heater. You guys may notice. I slept in these clothes.
Now, Brad,
I am.
Brad, you know, we didn't talk about this before we started shooting, but I knew you were coming back from the Mets game. And so I don't have any Mets gear, so the best I could do was dress up as Grimace for you.
Oh, Brad.
So I went
Wow.
Grimace.
God bless you.
That's right.
Wow.
Look at you, my friend. You know, I did see you, and my heart leapt up because I had not seen you in so long. But now I'm putting two and two
Boom.
together. The purple.
Boom.
It
Hey,
actually had less to do with your
less to do with you.
personality.
Hold on.
It's just
and
your
my
purple
affection
shirt.
for you.
purple, fast food, high cholesterol. I'm Grimace. Come on.
Exactly.
Wow, that's
Exactly.
perfect.
I know,
But
right?
no,
Yeah.
I'm letting Twig run here because also you're the resident white person of Twig and Jenkins, half white person, Twig and
Yeah,
Jenkins.
yeah.
So
I'm,
you know,
I'm white adjacent.
I'm gonna let you run with it. You're doing great.
painful.
You're doing great.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. But that's actually one of the things that I was thinking about
Yeah.
bringing up that I was like, maybe we won't go down that path because it's a little too heady. But I think that, and I'll be interested in your perspective as Black and Asian, but one of the things that I think is so funny about our reluctance to talk about whiteness or maleness is that I don't know any black people who are all that interested in white people's apologies. Like, we're not particularly interested in like white people feeling uncomfortable. We're not particularly interested in white people feeling like they have to subjugate themselves or their identities for other people's sake. It's sort of like, I don't know who's asking y'all to do that, but I don't know any black people that aren't necessarily. Right.
Twitter.
It's definitely Twitter.
But it's this... I mean, it's like we want behavior change in the kind of broader sense. We want structural social change and political change and legislative change. But in an individual context, it's kind of has gone off the rails. I think that that's sort of the thread on the right that so many people, I think, and makes sense intuitively to so many people.
Yeah.
That's just like, we've missed something here where we're asking people to cower or feel so contained. Like, black people don't want to feel contained because we are who we are. So like, why would we don't want that for y'all either.
I think that there are two things that are happening simultaneously, and I think that you're really putting your finger on not so much that anyone's asking for it, but there is this feeling that we have to. There's a feeling that, and honestly, it's something that, was part of our conversation when we were talking about it. The amount of space that white dudes just take up in society as a whole, and maybe there is a space for us to take a little bit of a step back. But there's actually another conversation that I think we're starting to have, which is, to your point, white dudes aren't necessarily having the right conversation with other white dudes to make sure that they understand that nobody is asking that of us either.
Great point.
There we go. Yeah.
Privilege is not a zero-sum game.
Right.
Privilege is actually something that we should all take advantage of, that we should all have in our lives. And it's not, if we're extending privilege and we're extending that ability to show up as full selves for everybody else in society, that doesn't mean we have to show up any less.
Yeah.
It just means everyone gets to show up as they are.
Yes. Unapologetically.
Unapologetically.
And I completely agree. And I will... Should I do this? I mean, again, guys, it's been a late night. It's been a late night. I don't know what time it is.
Rip.
I'm going to let it rip because there was a white women for Kamala call that did go off the rails, in my humble opinion. Did you guys see this call? The thing is, I did not
saw
listen
parts of it.
in deference and respect because, again, whenever Twigg and I are
First of all, don't think about white women and then look at me. Why are you consoling me? I am not a white woman. I get it. My mother is white. I am not white.
Oh my God. I'm so lightheaded. That was hilarious. No. I was saying sometimes Twigg and I are critical. We do it with love. But there was a moment on the white women for Kamala call where it was almost like, how do I describe this moment, Twigg? It was as if a kindergarten teacher was explaining to children how to interact with non-white people. It was as if it was almost like National Geographic shit. Like, it was like here's how we talk and let Black and brown people have their space. It made me want to jump off of where, I don't even know where I was watching this, but as a person of color, as a Black person, as an Asian person, and as a man, this is why we lose. Because if you are someone who is just not in the bubble of democratic, progressive Twitter and politics and saw that, you would think this person is so disconnected from the way that real life works. And what I mean to say is Black people would think that, right? Yeah. And that does no favors for anyone to talk about Black people as if we are, need like special kid gloves, and completely misses the point of why Twigg and I got involved in politics to begin with, right? And we've so devolved our humanity into nonsense, into bullshit, and we have alienated so many millions and millions of people with that kind of bullshit. Like, we're doing it to ourselves, in my humble opinion. No one is doing it.
They just need to clip us.
yes,
They just need to clip us talking about us.
Yes,
And,
right.
Like that's honestly, if the Republican Party just like ran ads of Democrats talking about other Democrats, they might actually win the election. They could just maybe win the election off of that.
Like I felt that sort of PC. Now I sound like a right-wing person.
I know it's hard. It's actually hard not
that
to
kind
come
of
off.
like trafficking of the right way to act around black people is dehumanizing to black people.
Absolutely. And
So
guilt can't get in the way
Yeah.
of the work. And it seems like the language that is adopted by people sometimes, the guilt gets in the way of the actual work that needs to be done.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really what you're really pointing to. It's, when I see those conversations and I'm like, oh, that's so cringe. My initial thing, I've been doing comms for a long time.
Yeah.
It's get at the emotional state of whatever's going on in that person's mind, right? And that person is racked with guilt
Yes.
about hundreds of years of mistreatment and doesn't know in any way, shape, or form how to actually have a conversation that bridges past that guilt towards healing, towards what we actually need to do, towards actually treating folks like human beings,
Yeah.
and actually getting past that sort of stuff. And it's deleteriously unhelpful to the work that we actually need to be doing.
yeah.
We also spend a lot of time talking to people like they're like in literally like as you said, like a National Geographic magazine. Like we don't talk to people the way that people actually talk. We just
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah.
And like that is a huge problem. You see, I get a lot of polling. I get a lot of message guidance that comes into my inbox on a like regular basis. I read it. And every time I read it, I'm like, that is not how people speak to each other.
Right.
Like we can't. And like if you say that back, the answer is like, well, we tested it. And if you say this specific word
No.
in this specific way, in this order, this works with people. And it's like, it worked with people in your focus groups. And like, I get it, but nobody fucking talks like this.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
I can't go out and have a conversation and use these words. People are going to look at me like I'm an alien.
Yeah.
Y'all don't have pollsters in your audience, right? Because I'm about to say something so unkind.
We just
Tom.
went off on
Oh,
pollsters.
Tom.
We
Jeez,
went
that's
off
right.
on
Hi,
pollsters. But Tom isn't really a pollster.
Yeah.
He's more of a data guy. It's
Absolutely.
different. Yeah. Very
He's a
different.
stats guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I can't tell you how many times earlier in my career, to your point, like I would get poll data back from a pollster and it would be like, all right, turn this into talking points, turn this into message guidance. And I would do exactly that. And the pollster and everyone else would be like, this isn't ripped from the polling.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I know, because of the language you use, because it's so clinical. It is so devoid of any sort of the emotionality that people actually make decisions on. How the hell do you expect me or the candidate or the organization or anyone else to actually say this shit with a straight face and get anyone to actually emotionally connect with what they need to do in order to cast a ballot?
Yeah.
Can't do it.
So tell us, for the people that weren't on the call, because I wasn't on the call, but again, because of the beauty of Twitter, like I saw so many clips and I also heard readouts of it, how moving it was and how cool it was. But some of the highlights, like what happened? I mean, I know, speaking of the dude, like you had the dude,
I mean, if
Yeah.
we're going
which
to
is,
do
let's just start
Well, this
there.
is my question was going to be when you guys were casting for
Yeah,
this call.
true.
man.
It's like when you thought
Yes.
white dudes, like who were the first people to spring to your mind?
did a
and
great
did you
job.
get them on the?
I mean, the dude. I
Obviously.
did really want John Goodman, so if like John
Okay.
Goodman is like listening, like we would
Goodman.
love for you
God
to do
we'll
bless
at him.
something.
We'll clip this and at
Yeah.
him.
Who
Who got the dude? Who went through this? Because Twigg and I do some of this
he
talent
came
stuff.
he came through at the last minute.
Yeah.
And
Literally, like
it was like 30 minutes before we had locked the run of show.
Wow.
I send like a message to our WhatsApp group and it's like, hey guys, I know you're gonna be mad. And also
Excited.
like we have someone to add to the run of show. The dude is gonna be on literally, and like I got an email about it. Like, hey, Jeff Bridges is interested. Like, do you guys want him on? And we were like,
Obviously.
Incredible.
yeah, fuck yeah, he's the dude. He's not a dude, he's the dude.
He's the dude. Like, you should, speaking of merch, just put him on the shirt. You know,
Oh, he's on a lot of Rogue merch.
Yeah.
a lot of road
Yeah,
merch.
sure.
God bless.
He's on a lot of the Rogue merch.
God bless.
If people would like to purchase
do you
merch,
guys
you
have
can go to
official-
whitedudesforharris.com and click
Amazing.
merch on the website, and you can
Let's
buy
go.
hats.
Let's go.
You can buy koozies.
That's rad.
Onesies.
Wow. Really
Let's
hitting all the demos.
go.
You know it.
We really are.
Absolutely. I love this.
We did think about flags. We decided not to do flags.
We did.
I mean,
We thought about golf
What about
towels.
like the car, the ones that
Flags
people
would be
put on
great.
their cars,
Oh,
those little
like the
flags.
football flags?
Yeah,
The football
yeah.
Flags, that's a good
My dad
one.
loves those. Not
football
a white guy,
jerseys,
but
maybe. Like, let's
White
go.
dudes for Harris football jerseys.
Let's go.
Let's do it.
you know,
Honestly,
yeah.
Why not?
Seriously.
I know what he's getting for Christmas. I'm going to the NFL site. I'm just going to make him one.
Incredible.
Just says white dude on the
It
back.
totally. And number one.
There you go. What surprised you guys most about the process?
Yeah.
I was surprised by how well people responded, to be totally honest.
Okay.
I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
In the moment it felt really good. I wasn't sure if it was being interpreted that way. And then I think the other piece of it was just like, there was no, we didn't have comments open.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't like everyone could see each other's faces, but there was like a real sense of community that people felt on that call. They felt like they were in community with each other. And that was something we were trying to create, but
Yeah.
it's so hard to know if you're doing that
Yeah.
from like the other end of like a Zoom. And like I'm sitting there reading off a script, like basically like as a telethon host and like real time. I hadn't even read the script all the way, like
Nice.
just like in
Thanks.
good white dude fashion.
Thanks,
yeah,
man.
that's a real Twigg and Jenkins.
hadn't
That's,
even-
that's a comms. Yeah. That's
I hadn't even read
rewrite
through
it.
the script all the way in
Yeah.
real time, so like there were some things that I said in there where I was like, "Wow, somebody wrote that in and I said it out loud. I put that into the world."
Guilty.
Great.
No, so you nailed it. You nailed it. And even though like he had to deal with the fact that like me, his wonderful wife Jess, like 4 other people are literally texting him every 2 minutes. Keep your energy up. Keep your energy up. Because he was on for like what 2.5 hours. It was
And I'm
insanity.
like I have a
2.5
pretty chill,
hours.
I have a
It
pretty
lasted
chill
that
demeanor.
long?
Oh, it was wild.
Yeah.
Like my demeanor is just like I'm not it has been corrected to me over the years that I am not a chill person.
Yeah.
But I have a chill demeanor about me, and so
That's amazing.
people kept texting me, "Ross, more energy," and then I kept being like, "Fuck you guys."
Truly.
I'm doing my best.
Yeah.
I was like at the end. By the end, I was like yelling, and they were like, Keep this energy
Yeah.
exactly the way it is."
You need a little bit of
I
Brad
yell.
Jenkins.
Yeah. I'm the opposite of you. I yell.
So
But
the other thing that I want to say with regard to the talent that we had on the call, we didn't see and we didn't vet any of the statements, any of the stories, anything that was said. And what just stunned me as we went through the call was how each and every one of them completely understood the assignment, really got inherently the conversation that we were hopefully starting. And the emotional connection that they made with the audience was just extraordinary.
yeah, it's beautiful.
Who surprised you the most? Like who was the person who showed up that you're like, I'm not sure if this is gonna go, but they knocked it out of the park?
Sean
Or-
Astin,
Yeah.
aka Rudy, or
Okay.
Yeah.
Samwise
What a
Gamgee.
legend. What a legend.
That guy's fucking
He's
awesome.
the best.
And like I expected him to be good, but then he like pulled out this story, like really like personal story about his brother and this men's group he was a part of that basically saved his life, and
Wow.
and it was just really touching and beautiful. And it turns out that he is exactly who you think he is, which it's really nice when you meet famous people and they like
It's rare.
we all know a lot of
and nice,
politicians
yeah.
and stuff.
Yeah.
And like, they're not always who they are acting like
Yeah.
they are. And it's nice when people are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I heard a really good gossipy story I'll tell you guys after about a
Come
senator.
on, Twigg, you gotta save it for the pod.
Sorry.
Come on.
Okay.
Come on.
Oh,
Um.
I'll share if you share.
So
Yeah,
white
right.
dudes comes up every episode. So we've been talking about white men. Twigg and I started this pod because we're codependent, work spouses. and we would just call each other. This is during the before days during the Biden campaign.
Yeah, a fantastic white man, by the way.
A fantastic white man.
Primo.
One of the best.
Yeah, one of the best. One of the best.
Before Kamala took the helm. But we would, constantly call each other apoplectic, losing our minds,
As a good political operative does.
as one does, as a good one does. But white men was coming up even then, right? And I think that we had saw Trump's strategy. We're really seeing it in full force in these last few weeks of running up the score with men. This is his only way of winning. Like, he's exhausted every voter demographic, meaning his ceiling is where it's at, right? And it doesn't matter how many assassination attempts there are. His broadly, his poll numbers just don't go up, right? The idea of reaching young men is a really smart strategy. And we're also seeing Trump execute this strategy, going on Logan Paul, going on Andrew Schultz, going on Aiden Ross, just like name every single white
He's going on Joe
male
Rogan.
provocateur.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about this where I'm surrounded. This is part of the reason why Twigg always laughs at me, because I always give her the right wing rundown, right? Because you just don't, it just doesn't even enter your algorithm or your orbit. Like, you have a force field.
Yeah. There's like real suffering in the world. Like, I have real problems. Like, life's hard enough. I don't need to like subject myself to.
Also, you're not a dude.
This is
Like,
what I was
that's the
gonna
thing.
say.
Like, if
Yes.
you're a dude,
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
you can't get out. Like,
You can't escape it.
Yeah, I get Andrew Tate videos.
Yeah, same.
Surround
And
sound.
most of my TikTok feed is like lesbians chopping firewood and like sports and cute animals. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like, that is the almost entirety of my TikTok feed.
And you still get
yet,
Andrew Tate.
I still get Andrew Tate.
So I was thinking about this. As a man, it is almost impossible to not be deluged with right-wing content almost constantly. If you watch sports constantly, if you are kind of a health nut, like if you lift weights constantly, if you like hiking in the outdoors constantly,
Frank Thomas and Doug Flutie testosterone ads that I
One-
get
100%.
while I'm
The
running in
number-
the morning watching ESPN. Literally, they air 4 or 5 times per commercial. It's insane.
It's insane. What has fundamentally happened here? Because this is the question. This wasn't always the case.
No.
Like Obama 08, if we think about Black excellence and we think about also Black excellence with regards to masculinity, and, I think being at that age, being sort of a young person when we were working for President Obama, being a Black man or just being a man or a white man, you were not getting any of that shit. It was almost the exact opposite. What has happened to our culture? Because I think some of it is Trump, obviously. I mean,
Sure.
like led to Trump. But what fundamentally happened with white? Because the last thing I'll say, not to be mean here, but it's all white dudes.
Yeah, no, for real.
Like all of these people that are hawking their wares, hawking their fitness things, hawking also the whole Instagram culture of like grind, that whole culture of like be rich, be an entrepreneur, all that. Like, it's all.
I mean, there's a huge strain of that in for Black folks though too.
yeah,
The, like the
Okay.
the gospel, the prosperity gospel.
Prosperity gospel. That's a good
Nonsense.
point.
Like,
That's a good point.
That's a big Black guy thing.
There's
Yeah.
also like a strain of like crypto bros
Yes.
that are
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that,
yeah.
Are, that also like lean like Black and brown.
Yes.
Totally.
Like, especially in your hometown of Miami.
What? Crazy shit occurring in Miami?
Never.
Never.
Oh. No, it's all related. And
Yeah.
you hit the nail on the head. Something did happen. And 2 things, quite frankly, I think happened. Number one, this concept of the American dream, which had always been presented as very aspirational, just stopped ringing true to a lot of people. And the reason is because I think a lot of white guys have been told throughout their early lives and their parents were told and their grandparents were told, put your head down, work hard, you'll never have to worry a day in your life. You'll have, our grandparents were told they'll have a job in the union and they'll have a job in the factory their whole life, no problem, blah, blah. That didn't happen, right? 90s, free trade, whatever you want to say, change that. The next generation, go to college. All you got to do is go to college. You'll be fine. Put your head down, work hard, everything good. That's not true either. Society has accelerated to the point where it's become harder and harder for a lot of folks, especially folks who've been told their entire lives, just do the right thing and you'll be fine, to really get the rate of change. And they're looking for places to make sense of the world. And you got people like Trump, and you got a bunch of hucksters, and you've got a bunch of other folks who are telling them that they need to be afraid all the time, and they have all the answers, and these are the simple solutions to fix it. And guess what? I get it. I get why you would listen to that stuff, and I get why you just want someone to shut up and fix it. Because it does suck, and it is scary, and the world has become a really strange and very complex place in our lifetime.
I also think, like, sort of like building on that, it isn't just the American dream. It's almost all of American mythology has like died or is in the process of dying. Like, most men are told from a very early age, you have two, both implicitly and explicitly, you have two reasons for existing in the world. The first is to provide, and the second is to protect.
Right.
And if you're working class, the likelihood that you are going to be able to provide by yourself for a family is extremely low in this economy.
Right.
And that's probably not changing. And if you're middle class or upper middle class, the likelihood that you are going to be needed to be a provider is also pretty low. And so those, and then,
because women are
graduating
at
graduating
greater
from college.
rates.
Yeah. Like, and so you end up in and I think
because we have access to contraceptives and abortion
Ding.
and IVF.
Bingo.
Ding.
I think all of these things have happened. Our mythology hasn't caught up with it. And like, to Brad's point, like, these folks are coming in and they're providing structure and explanation for why it is. And like, the thing is, if you like listen to a guy like Jordan Peterson, for example, he will say what he starts with is something like, is a really basic premise, which is like, you need to like take pride in yourself.
Yeah.
You need to get up in the morning. You need to make your fucking bed.
Yeah.
You need to take pride in your work. You should go to the gym and care about what you look like. And then so that part isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah,
No,
all of that seems very reasonable.
Yeah,
and
sounds
true.
good to me.
But then he turns around and is like, it's all women's fault.
Yeah.
And
It's both.
and that's where we go. That's where we go way off the rails. And, like, some parts of like the far right manosphere talk about, it's like immigrants, it's women, it's people of color. In some parts, it's Jews. Like, it just, whoever it is, they find a scapegoat for it.
Sure.
And I used to think, there's just like all these people who believe these things. And then this election cycle has reminded me that it's not even that all of these people believe the stuff that they're saying. It's that they have an economic incentive. Jordan Peterson makes a lot of money.
So much
he makes
money.
so much money.
They all these guys do.
There's so much more money
Yeah.
in like the politics of grievance than there is in like saying normal stuff to people.
Because they're offering solutions, right? To your point, identifying these challenges and saying, I'm the one that has all the answers for you.
That's right.
Right. And here you can buy it for $12.99.
Well, that's the other part of it, right?
Yeah.
Because the same people who have these simple answers that they are packaging up and then selling for $12.99, these are cynical people who believe that capitalism and everything is a broken system where you have to be a criminal in order to get ahead
Yeah.
in the first place.
right.
So they then fleece their entire membership. They fleece all of their listeners.
Yeah.
They make sure that they're trying to sell them all of these vitamin supplements that don't do anything, or pillows that they can fucking sell for, $18. And it's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. It's just run amok.
And then the platforms, just like the platforms incentivize it. Like,
That's right.
Absolutely, Yeah.
you're
That's
like
right.
if you're on YouTube, like you are incentivized to get people riled up about a thing, and then you like sell your stuff to those
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
And
It's a great
a great
vicious
grift.
cycle.
It is a great grift.
And I think that there's the racial layer comes in because of everything you were saying. Like a lot of the guys that I grew up with in Ohio, like I grew up in a pretty white neighborhood, and they were fed that message, right? If you just, and Barack Obama did it too, right? He's like,
We all
if
have.
you
Yeah.
work hard and you play by the
100%.
rules, you will be okay in this economy that is falling apart in everyone's like dust in your mouth. It's just like completely falling apart. And then you have a pop culture that in the post-Obama moment, but also responding to like marketing and demographics and just what the consumer base is, that shows more Black people on TV, shows more Latinos. Like that is we've become comfortable as a culture expressing grievance in a whole realm of ways that we never used to about what white supremacy has done, about what patriarchy has done, and the way that it's making us all suffer. But of course, like Black folks and Latino, everyone first, like everyone has their shin to kick, rightfully.
Yeah.
And yet, so these guys that I grew up with are like, so wait a second. All I ever did was like mow my yard, pay my taxes, go to school, be nice to my neighbor. All I've ever wanted is a new truck every couple of years and to go on vacation,
Right.
and like put my kids through college. And suddenly I am the reason why everything in the world is broken.
Yeah.
Like I am the reason why everything is a disaster. Like what are you talking
And
about?
that is the reason why Jordan Peterson is so compelling. That is the reason why these sort of grifters and grievance hucksters operate so well. And then on top of that, not to, again, because we say this with love, Democratic Party, but I think we have failed. Twigg and I made this joke where, and I'm curious if it's changed, but if you go to the Kamala Harris website, there's every single community under the sun on the website, right? API, Native Hawaiian, Latino, disability, Black women, Black men, like the whole gamut.
That wasn't a joke. That was something I heard Scott Galloway to say.
Oh, is that right?
He did a run. He was like doing a post. He was talking about his experience on the White Dudes for Harris
Oh,
call.
interesting.
And he was talking about how much he loved it and how excited he was by it and like how much it meant to him in the community that you were talking about. And then he was saying
He was one to say, okay.
that he either went to the Democrats.org
Yeah,
or
yeah.
somebody did.
I heard I do listen to his podcast.
Yeah.
And I did hear this.
Yeah. And he was like, and there's just like no, you have all these community groups and the Democrats being like, we serve and or like we value or we work for, and then there's just no men and no white guys. And he's like, and you're surprised that they don't come to your party anymore?
Now, that being said, it feels as though Kamala and the campaign are doing more
Yes.
than we've seen in
Yeah.
years.
I completely agree
Yeah.
with that.
And
yeah.
so there might be, and it certainly seems that there is this newfound understanding. And look, it's not even about electoral win. Honestly, the stakes are so much higher now. And I think that folks are starting to realize that by virtue of excluding white dudes from the bigger, wider tent, what we've done is basically radicalize a bunch of people who are now turning their backs on democracy altogether.
Yeah, totally.
And so I am seeing where folks, and Kamala is certainly doing this, and Tim Walz is certainly doing this, and the smart people in Wilmington certainly understand
Yeah.
the need to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a thing that is really that I want to I want to underline is we're not talking about like an either or. We're talking
Yeah.
about like a both and. And I think people, especially on the left, really want to end up in an either or conversation. Either we center people of color or we center white people.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Great
it's
point.
not we can't live in that binary. We like have to be willing to say like, yes, we do need to like talk to and do things like for people of color.
Yes.
Like that is a thing that has to happen. We also cannot ignore white people, and we can't ignore white men, because ultimately the goal of all of the things that we do is to build power to win elections. That's what we do in politics.
Yes.
And we don't win if we just decide that like we're cool seating 70% of white dudes to the Republicans.
Yeah.
And the thing is, a lot of those folks should be with us.
Yes. That's
Because when you poll people on our policies, they actually really fucking like our policies.
Yeah.
They just don't like us.
So that's great.
We have been living in this binary, though. Not to be one of these. Again, I'm
You're
so
right.
fired up from this Mets game last night, guys. We have been,
Even though y'all lost.
we have been living in this binary. The number of events that I've been to, and look, I'm a part. Like, we're all a part of it. I call it like, it's like just name a community and you just call it like the Asian industrial complex, the Black industrial complex, the people of color industrial complex. The number of summits, galas, collaboratives, like all these things where like white people just aren't invited. Like, I'm just gonna put these organizations on blast. Like, for real. Like,
I'm
for
not
real.
arguing.
No, okay,
Yeah.
okay. Where it's like, all right, let's do this. Let's bring all the folks together and let's figure out, and literally, like, let's figure
Don't
out.
want white people there.
Let's figure out how we change the country. Let's figure out how we change hearts and minds. And I'm like, yo, I don't know if you noticed, but like, there's not a single white person in this room. Who do we need to hear everything that we're saying? White people. How we change hearts and minds. Get feedback from the people whose hearts and minds we need to change. There was and I understand representation. I understand wanting to have a seat at the table. You know, again, when we worked for President Obama, one of the most special things was in that Office of Public Engagement, we were able to open the door for so many communities who had never been able to have a seat at the table ever. And that was so special and so important. But we just lost the ball with what you just said. We lost the ball that we still have to win. You know what I mean? Like, you still have to put points on the board, not to keep using sports metaphors. And when you keep losing, this is what happens. The Supreme Court happens. Roe v. Wade, all of these things happen because we lost sight of the fact that yes, white people are still the vast majority of voters, period. So if you're trying to win a game, if you're trying to set up a game plan, a playbook, and you are not every single day having a white strategy, like we had so many strategies for so many different communities, but I never heard talk of a white male strategy one time in the past however many years.
Well, for so long in Democratic politics was unions.
Yeah, well, that's
Right?
a very good
Like,
point.
that's
That's
right.
true.
So
or
many
it was
years.
just the default.
Or it was
like,
the default.
Yes.
It was
Right.
the norm.
Right.
Right. But like in the White House and public engagement, I had the labor union. I was the labor union person. And so the running joke was like, Carri has the white guy portfolio.
Right.
So my love for white men is deep, as discussed. It's both deep and expert. And the steelworkers threw me a
PhD.
birthday party.
White male PhD.
Shout out Tim Waters. There was a man with an American flag guitar that was there singing me country songs. We did shots of
Amazing.
tequila.
Amazing.
Actually sounds really
Yeah,
fun.
I
It
was
was
sounds
so
really
fun. It was
fun.
like one of my
Sounds
favorite
terrible.
birthday parties
That sounds
ever.
amazing.
Anyway, but that was, I mean, one of the enduring complaints that I have about the Obama era is that because he was so screwed over by democratic institutions in the beginning, he kept them in the doghouse for basically his entire presidency, right? Whether that's setting up OFA as an outside organization after he wins, whether that's how public engagement actually ran. Like, it was like pulling teeth to get him to do anything. And don't get me wrong, I didn't want to hang out with Richard Trumka either.
Right.
But like, you have to, and some, like the building trades rule, there was watching them cleave off of the Democratic Party in the difference between campaigns that I ran in Ohio, the election 2008, when he barely got any of those endorsements anyway, but like having to try and get these guys to endorse him in 2012.
Yeah.
Like the Teamsters, the Teamsters haven't even endorsed. Like the Teamsters, like it's wild. The way that we have lost them. SEIU teachers, those are totally different experiences, largely because their membership is really different. Women of color, over index in those areas, but our kind of neglect of how we organized white men for so long has been so thorough.
Yeah.
And like justified, I think, in many respects.
Yeah.
And I think people want to make it about, like, every time I have a conversation with this, people really want to make it about messaging, like, oh, we don't have the right message. But it's actually, it has almost nothing to do about messaging and everything to do, and this is the vibes election, like it has everything to do with vibes.
Agreed.
Totally.
They just don't feel
100%.
like
Totally.
they have a spot in the party.
Because
Totally.
here's the thing. I'm gonna just say it out loud, because y'all didn't.
Right.
Let's just be real. Like there was, I believe, an overcorrection, right? And I think that, look, maybe it needs to happen. Like maybe there needs to be an evolution. Maybe there needs to be a shaking up. Maybe there needs to be, which felt like it was a very shifting, like everything was kind of unmoored at that moment. I also remember working for President Obama, we had the lobbyist ban, which people now completely forget about. But how unmoored was this town when all of these lobbyists weren't allowed to have meetings at the White House, right? And they're so pissed off about not being able to have meetings at the White House. Well, what happened? People just like yelled and hooted and hollered, and then they got rid of it. And now lobbyists are back at the White House, right? So, but I think that didn't happen, in my humble opinion, as it related to the sort of like progressive infrastructure is the best way to put it, right? Which is, you can include Twitter in this as well, right? Where the sort of outside voices at that moment this was a moment for a new voice to emerge, new voices to emerge.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I'll use an example in the Asian American community. It's like the Asian American community were so fired up, but like every single Asian American community wanted a meeting at the White House, right? The Koreans, the Indonesians, the Cambodians, the Vietnamese, like the Sri Lankans, like just go down all of that list, right? And so magnify that by every other community that had been so neglected. And what you have here is, again, just we took our eye off of, it's not communications, you're right. It is
the vibes.
It's vibes.
The firefighters were one of the most loyal unions to President Biden ever. Like,
Absolutely.
he loves the firefighters. His house burnt down. They saved Jill. I don't
think I knew that.
Yeah, he had a house in Delaware that burnt to the ground, and firefighters saved Jill. Like he almost had his second wife. Like it was talk about Irish tragedy, but. So he shouts them out. He loves them, but like they have not endorsed Kamala.
Yeah,
right?
The firefighters.
Firefighters didn't. Yeah.
There's no meaningful difference in their policy around firefighting, but it's just.
But isn't there more public funding and more,
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
There's no policy difference, but there's a vibe difference.
It's just a vibe difference. Yeah.
I think the California firefighters are like maybe considering breaking.
Well, I was
going to
say, on a state-by-state basis, there's just so much happening in state legislatures that affect firefighters that, in a lot of ways, like they don't want to go too far because at the end of the day, they're going to have to answer to a bunch of Republican legislatures next year. And
they weren't afraid of that a year ago?
Yeah, surprisingly, they should have been because it's horrible out there.
So which unions have endorsed Kamala?
Why ask me?
Let's do it.
Let's
do it. Let's go through.
Honestly, the only ones.
I think the teachers, teachers,
UAW.
UAW.
Teamsters did not.
Teamsters did not.
There's a group of black Teamsters that did.
Oh,
yeah,
cool.
Which was
That's
interesting.
Cool.
Yeah, steelworkers have. I'm
AFL.
sure I don't know that. I'm
I think the AFL did.
They did.
I think
and so
they came out
AFL
real
is
quick.
comprised of 53 different unions. So I'm naming unions within the AFL.
I see. I'm sorry.
Exactly. This is exactly what I'm talking about, guys.
PhD of white men. Let's
Listen,
go.
Watch me work. Building trades did not. Teamsters did not.
I'm doing a lot of reflection about what you're saying, Brad,
Yeah.
because it is a very deep, and I don't think it is something that we have done a lot of reflection on, simply because you're really talking about a period that is kind of just right in our rearview mirror.
Yeah.
This just happened,
Yeah.
right? 16, let's say 16 to 24 for purposes of putting it in a box. That was right. I mean, that was yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We haven't really unpacked it. And as you were talking, and again, I don't want to go back to communications because it's about more than communications. That's absolutely
You're the
correct.
communications dude.
I know.
It's
That's
your
kind of what
jam,
I.
man.
It's kind of what I do. And the truth is that there was this meta conversation that you're talking about, in which a lot of new voices were starting to take up more room in the political ecosphere, voices that had not had a voice in that ecosphere for a very long time. There was no conversation with white dudes that was okay.
Yeah.
And so instead, it was filled with was this void of kind of an ecosphere on the other side that took advantage of it and said, yeah, guess what? See what we're talking
Yes.
about? See what's happening over there? This is the thing that we were telling you needed to be afraid of. Be afraid of it.
Yeah.
And propelled that pendulum swing.
Yeah, I would even take that a step further to say that, like, we as a movement decided that it was okay to be actively hostile towards white men. And there are
So true.
the thing
So
is
true.
there are like actually genuinely good reasons for it. Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's like I'm not even going to say like, okay, it's like not without merit in many ways. And what happened was the way that started to play out in people's communities is their children would go to school and they would get told at school, or they would hear messages like on TV that like being a white dude isn't cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
And their kids would come to them and be like, wait, is it not cool for me to be a white dude?
Yeah.
And like, think about having to like, I've heard
That's
so
a
many
nightmare.
parents talk
Yeah.
about like
Yeah.
having to have that conversation with their 11-year-old child.
Yeah.
And when that's how these things are starting to play out in your community, it doesn't matter how progressive you are.
Sure.
When you have to have that conversation with your kid, you're like, okay, like this is not how this should be going.
No, we lost the thread.
But
know?
but the thing is, many things can be true at the same time.
Yeah.
Like, we needed to create space for other people
Yeah.
in our movement, and just like in the country, like those things were not wrong. They were not misguided. We didn't
Totally.
make mistakes to do those things. I think, to be honest, there weren't even that many people saying this at the time, and so like it just we're in a hindsight situation,
Yeah.
which is we probably did overcorrect by the way in which we were casually just real chill with shitting on white dudes.
yeah.
And
It was comedic
What the-
too.
yeah,
it
it
was
was
fun.
funny.
It was
Yeah,
kind of
I
fun.
mean, it's still kind of
It's still
funny.
kinda
but,
fun.
like,
it's not funny a lot of the time. So
Yeah.
like, it turns out that when you go out and shit on a group of people for like
They don't
long
like
enough,
it.
they don't like it. Except,
Crazy. It's
They
a
don't want
crazy.
to, and they don't want to hang out with you anymore.
Wait, what?
And then they might
Wild.
want to side with someone who like really likes them and absolves them of all of their sins
Yeah.
and tells them that they're really great.
yeah, and,
You know?
and says like,
Stunning.
this other group of
Stunning.
people is who you should blame for all of your
Yes.
problems.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, they're all calling you names. It's like
Yeah, yeah.
validating the
Yeah.
theory of the case being propagated by the right. Can I ask a question that's a little bit more broad? One of my pet obsessions this campaign, little messaging, little vibey, is the sort of reclamation of masculinity. We've seen
Yeah.
Barack Obama do
Yeah.
it. We've seen
Yeah.
Tim Walz do it. Just like being a man is actually like riding for chicks and like being like, and you can still do all this broy shit. You can still like wear camo and shoot guns and whatever you want. And that shouldn't, and actually being fragile and being antagonistic towards women or trying to limit their freedoms or their choices or put restraints on them is anti-masculine.
Yes.
Like how
Cuck behavior.
it is.
Total.
It is cuck behavior.
Total.
Betas.
Betas.
Totally. It's
All
low
betas.
T. Low T.
Way
Low
low
T.
T.
Very low T.
Getting back to those Frank Thomas, Doug Flutie commercials that I saw like 10 of this morning.
Oh my God.
Were they on the
They
white
are.
dudes for Kamala call?
Oh, no, my God. No. But you know what? We should have gotten Doug Flutie to talk about low T.
The algorithm is going to be all over this episode. I swear to God.
Absolutely. We're dropping gems.
Let's go.
Get us in on YouTube. But how coordinated was that? Is it just sort of a reaction? Is it sort of the simultaneous reaction to the vibe we're all sensing that like maybe we overcorrected and we're trying to find a balance, or maybe we ceded ground that we actually want back? Like, I want back being able to be proud to be whatever, X, Y, or Z. Like, how?
You know what? I don't think so. I think that it's a reflection that a lot of this has been going on in the back of our minds for some time, but nobody wanted to just come out and say it. And all it really took were a couple little pushes and nudges in the right direction. And then everyone was like, yeah, you know what? I'm just going to say it.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say it loud. I am going to say the quiet part. And I think that this is healthy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Agreed.
Because it's the start of what I hope is a real conversation around a group of folks who are trying to define what masculinity is, and they have no right to do it. I got to be very honest with you, and I hate calling people out like this.
Let's
but
go.
All right, Jesse Waters, you don't know the first fucking thing about what it means to be a dude. You really don't.
Oh my God! Speaking
don't.
of cucks, that dude is
I don't know who
Fuck,
that is.
man.
worst.
Oh, he's the guy
It's a
on
Fox
Fox.
News guy.
Yeah, the 5.
Sure.
Yeah.
You don't want to know.
You don't even want to know.
No,
That's
not,
true.
Not
Don't
even
even-
gonna bother to Google that.
don't
Hold on a
even-
sec. Did I make a boo-boo?
No,
Okay, good.
you're great.
I just want to make sure.
You're perfect.
Thank you.
I
I
love
love
you.
that.
Touch me.
I love that.
I'm very
see?
cold.
I love
See,
this.
that was
You're kinda
totally
warm.
I
I
am.
love this.
I think that like there's
I
a
love that I'm the least affirming and affectionate person at this panel right now.
It's true.
I think like the idea, I really like putting what we're putting out there next to what Trump is. I think it's not perfect. And as Brad said, it's like it's the start of something. You know, like having Hulk Hogan rip his shirt off at like the Republican convention is good for us, because dudes are like, men are going to look at that and be like, that's not me. And then
Speak for yourself, bro.
I mean, look, if you want to rip your shirt off right here.
I'm kidding.
I mean, you're wearing a V-neck. It's the
It
perfect shirt to
could be
rip
very
off.
easy. It could be simple. I'm just kidding.
You know, like a lot of people watch that and they're like, yeah, that's not really me. That's not really me.
Yeah.
And I think we're giving them an alternative this cycle. And I think
Yeah.
Tim Walz is sort of like the perfect type of alternative. You know, like he was talking about, you know, I saw him like on like an Instagram show talking about gutters and how much he
Yes.
loves cleaning gutters.
The
And-
Subway show, I love
yes,
that.
the Subway
thing.
show.
Yeah.
It's awesome. And it just, I'll put that up against what they're throwing out there like any day of the week. Is what we're going to put out there going to be for everyone? No. But I think we're going to find more people who are like, that just like feels more like my vibe than like what like Donald Trump is trying to sell me. Now,
that right.
there is something aspirational that like to sort of like the alpha male that, and I think that is going to appeal to some people, especially to a lot of younger folks.
Sure.
But like, you know, this isn't the end of a conversation. Like as Brad said, this is the beginning of a conversation I think we're going to be having now about masculinity for the next 5-10 years. At least I hope.
Yeah.
I love it. I think your call was, of the Zooms, my favorite, I think. And the black, and the obviously the black woman, black male call. The one thing that I think Twigg and we've talked about it's almost like a privilege and a gift of being multiracial, because it allows for us to kind of see all of the bullshit of just race in general and how we splice and dice each other up and how we divide ourselves. Like, we're doing it to ourselves. No one is doing this. No one is doing this to us. We're doing it. We're propagating it. The one thing, though, that I wish we see more of, and I'm doing it in my own work, where I'm purposely doing multiracial work, purposely. And I think that it's so easy to do it, and we don't do enough of it. And when I mean multiracial, I mean white people too, right? I mean, that's the other part of this, which is to say, the one thing I loved about the white dudes call, and was there ever just a dudes call, like all dudes call?
There was a dudes call, but it was like for sort of like more, it was like a more progressive like movement
because
call.
I would love a black dudes call and a white dudes call.
Yeah.
Because I think that there's so much to learn from each other. Just like there's so much to learn among white dudes sharing their vulnerabilities. I think there's a lot that can be learned from each other. And there's a lot of solidarity between the same, to Twigg's point, the same trappings of this shit is not solely felt by white men. Like it's the trap is being laid down very, very strategically for black men as well. And again, this is what, honestly, I'm gonna sound so fucking cheesy. This is what got me into politics, was that Barack Obama speech. And we just don't do a good enough job of, and I think it's also because of the way our zero-sum game is when it comes to the money in politics, right? Like you have to sort of carve out who your group is. You have to raise money. You have to like build out your value proposition, your voter base. Like all of this stuff is a self-fulfilling prophecy of I'm going to prove how effective I am and how powerful my group is. But what we really, truly should do more of is like, why isn't there a color of change white dudes for Kamala call? Or, you know, like, why isn't there more? And we're trying to do it more with the Black and Asian communities. But men, broadly speaking, are going to go for Trump. I think if you just look at the data. And why don't like multiracial, we'll come up with a better name. But like just dudes, just like all dudes, like an all dudes call.
Yeah, I think that's the next. I mean, I think that's the next phase.
That's like the next evolution.
I think that's the evolution. That's how the work evolves. And you know, I think to go back to, I mean, not to like toot my own horn, but like
do it.
The organization I founded, Run for Something.
Let's
like,
go. My favorite fucking group in America, by the way.
Thank you. I
Congratulations.
appreciate that.
No, I'm serious.
I really appreciate
it's
it.
It's the best.
We have had so many conversations about, are we going to continue working with and endorsing like white men?
Yeah. And
that conversation probably has happened half a dozen times, like over the course of the organization's history.
Meaning you shouldn't endorse white men?
That maybe we shouldn't. Maybe we should have a conversation about it, because, you know, white men are still significantly over-indexed as like elected officials, and so like, and also like we get a ton of endorsement applications from young white men, and the conversation that we've had every single time has gone basically the same way. Should we do this? And then the answer has been, no, this is like, that's actually not what we do, because diversity doesn't just mean like racial and gender. It means economic diversity. It means geographic diversity. It means ideological diversity.
I was just going to say also what you stand for,
Totally.
why you were running.
100%.
Yeah.
And so like every time that conversation has come up, and I have been the person to start that conversation a couple of times.
Yeah.
And every time it's come up, we've come back with the same answer, which is it does not fully encompass like this full spectrum of what diversity is. And I think something that has happened, to get real meta, is like white supremacy has actually taken away the identity from a lot of white people.
Totally.
I am Polish. Like my like family are Polish Jews. And I know less about Poland than I do about like basically every other country. Like in the world. Like I am not in touch with my cultural heritage. And that is literally what white supremacy does. Is it erases your heritage and it makes you just sort of like a bland amalgam of things, which then becomes like very fun to mock and make fun of. Like, okay, like what is white culture? It's like
Mayo.
Mayo.
on white
Mayo.
bread.
Mayo.
Everyone said
and-
it. Everyone said it.
I actually really fucking like mayo. I would.
You're a white dude.
I
Yeah.
do. I love me.
mean,
I
come
love me
on.
some mayo.
Come on.
Um,
It's good.
I do love some mayo, but like like limp hot dogs, like
Yeah.
was what I was gonna say.
Sure.
And like
What?
nobody likes
That's white culture. White
yeah.
culture.
Can we talk
Limp
about
hot dogs?
nobody likes limp hot dogs.
Versus like erect hot dogs? Like, what are you?
You know, like just like
Versus like grilled.
yeah, like
you know,
a
I guess
really grilled, like nice, like
Oh, firm.
Yeah.
You definitely want it harder.
I like a New York
do.
dog. They're a little pliable.
Okay, I don't know about this limp hot dog thing.
limp hot dog.
Just, just
Never been a problem I've encountered.
wow, fair.
Anyway,
we're just opening
know
up a
why I'm
ton.
taking this to a different turn.
I mean, we're opening up a
Different
lot
podcast.
of new sponsorship opportunities
where
for
we're
you
going
all.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hebrew National.
Like
Yeah.
Roman,
Oh,
there you go.
There we go.
There you go.
they should really sponsor you guys.
Love that. Love that.
Roman, give us a call.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point around the overcorrection. I don't know should we all go around and say some of our favorite thing to close our favorite
White male thing.
white characteristics? To reverse the tide
know.
on,
Yeah.
on
I
like
shitting
this.
on white dudes.
I like
will
this.
say my favorite types of white dudes are ones that don't feel bad about being white. Like just be who you are.
Preach.
You know, like
Straight
I
up.
do not want to hear an apology. I don't want you to like tell me you got a black best friend. White women are really guilty of this. They're very quick to try and talk about like their biracial niece, which I find really painful.
Don't do it.
Yeah, don't do it, right? So don't feel bad. And then
You should write a handbook.
but also ones that don't. And I think the other side of that is white guys who are super comfortable with whoever.
Yeah.
Right. Like just not focusing on like, oh, well, Carri is this or that, or I'm looking at you and I'm making a bunch of assumptions.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I have to talk to you about that. It's
Yeah.
like what's that saying? It's like to a hammer, everything in the world's a nail.
Yeah.
It's like they're so laser focused on the fact that you might be different than them that they hyper focus on that difference in a weird way to try and make a bond with you.
The overcorrection.
One time I was in with Joe Biden when he was the vice president, and I was having him call the steelworkers president, who was like an old buddy of mine, Leo Gerard, former president of steelworkers, amazing guy. And Joe Biden, I just started at the White House, and Joe was like, "How's Carri doing? You know, how's it been working with Carri?" And they're on speakerphone. I'm sitting there. Leo doesn't know he's on
Incredible.
speakerphone. And I was just like, "Fuck." Like, I don't know how this is going to go. And Leo's like, oh, Carri's great. She's, always gets back to you. She tells you like it is. She's honest. Still getting used to all that goddamn hair, but
No.
Oh,
he's like, but she's the best. Like, I
my
love it. And I
God,
would have
I love
never,
that.
he never taught, like, he never brought it up. Like,
Yeah.
he never
Yeah,
made
yeah.
it a thing. I didn't catch him staring at it constantly. So, that's,
yeah, totally.
What are your favorites?
I honestly think it's it really does come down to exposure. And I grew up in Trenton, New Jersey, very, very Italian part of Trenton, New Jersey, and there's a very black part of Trenton, New Jersey. And so, and again, I'm multiracial, but so I would see, a lot of my white friends thought they were black. They would tell me that they're more black than I am, right?
Yeah.
So race was a very weird concept growing up. I also think race, depending on where you live, we think of race as a coastal elite now in DC, as to your point, like National Geographic, but it is very different and peculiar and very in so many different pockets of the country. I think our biggest problem right now, and Twigg, you brought up this statistic, which blew my mind, right? Which is to say the percentage of white people who have friends that are not white is so small. It's something like 80% of white people, right?
70, but still.
70% of
Wild.
white people only have white friends.
That's wild.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's a big
I'm
thing
also
in the-
not shocked by
in the
that.
wild-
I'm
either.
not shocked by it either, but when you hear it out loud,
That's a lot.
that's so many
Unbelievable.
people. And it's not
Unbelievable.
just old people. This is young people. This is like multi-generational. So I am down for, and again, this is the kind of project, like we think about again, back to foundation money, progressive infrastructure, all this money that's spent trying to win elections and trying to influence culture. I think that is the most important thing, is to change that statistic. And you have to do it with
intention.
Yeah,
you actually
you have to focus on
by
it.
virtue of like redlining and all of the ways that our neighborhoods are just segregated, de facto segregation anyway. It's like you have to actually seek out.
Because most people are growing up in places that are like relatively
Homogenous.
Yes.
places.
Sorry.
Cities actually
Cities.
that are diverse, but where they live in those cities is not necessarily diverse.
Totally.
Right.
And like I think I was lucky. I grew up in Houston, Texas. Go Astros! And yeah, I mean it's fair. And like Houston is, I think, like it was recently like ranked as like the most diverse city
so.
in America. And so like I got the opportunity, honestly, because my parents cared, to meet lots of different types of people while I was growing up.
Yeah.
And so when you say that, I'm like, oh, that's weird because that's not my experience. And also, but like if my parents hadn't been intentional, I just like would have grown up in this random suburb and I probably wouldn't actually have had any non-white friends. Like I probably just would have had a bunch of white friends. And so yeah, that's like I'm gonna be sitting with that.
We have to do
while.
more, and as people of color, because I think look, we could just beat up on you guys the whole time. I mean, this has been such a
I was
incredible
trying
conversation.
to turn it to compliments. And
Yeah, this has been so great. No, but I'm saying that, like, for instance, as I mentioned, like different kinds of programs and events or opportunities, like white people, you're invited too.
Well, thank you. Thank you,
And
Brad.
I think it should, and honestly, I think because the reality of the situation is, I don't want to get too deep on this, but there are organizations that have been kind of created out of whole cloth pretty recently.
Yeah.
And the huge reason why these organizations were created is because they weren't allowed at the seat, right? White people were not inviting them to their galas, right? So they're like, we're going to create our own gala. Mm-hmm. But what you really have done is just further separate yourself even more. You've created so what you've done is the status quo.
I've got bad news for you, Brad.
I understand the impulse for that,
I've got
though,
bad
but I
news.
think I understand the impulse for that, but I also do think that Black people is all I can speak of. I can't speak of like the Asian dynamic, but Black people are far more welcoming to white people than most white people assume.
Oh, yeah.
I think over and over and over again,
100%.
I hear from white family members, friends, or just like, oh, I can't go there. I can't do that. I'm like, Black people are the nicest people in the like, yes, you can.
Yes.
You will not be stared at. Go do your thing. Don't be weird. Like,
Yeah.
don't be a weirdo and like
You just be a
make
human.
everything about you. But like, don't go to a Black space and talk to them about Blackness, or like, don't be a weirdo.
Or maybe like don't bring your potato salad.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
Like
Sure.
don't
Just
do
leave
that.
the cooking
Now,
to
like,
someone else.
Don't do that.
Yeah,
On the
don't
other
do that.
hand,
But
on the other hand, I just want to
But-
be clear to everyone. I'm like a vampire. If you invite me once, you're never getting rid of me.
There we
You
go.
know?
So I'm coming.
listen, that's
I'm there.
fine.
There we go.
But to your point, it's like I think that Black people have always been much more we build things because yes, we are not included.
Mm-hmm.
But then we actually are much less exclusive than.
I agree with that.
So while we are still then organizing in a silo, I don't know that we are as restrictive about
Very
who
good
gets
point.
to participate. I think a lot of white people opt out. A lot of white people see things that they are not the majority in and assume that they cannot participate and don't even bother to try and show up or try and play.
It's such a great point, and then it reinforces white people only hang out with white people.
Right.
Because then they're like, well, we're not included. It's a very self-fulfilling prophecy. I'm thinking of that. Remember that Instagram post? Who posted it? It was like Kristen Bell or someone. It was like, they posted this photo of a party, and there was
remember
like
this.
50 celebrities in this photo, and they were
Yeah.
all white. And it's like, you are the most privileged, famous, rich people in the world. You have access to so many interesting and compelling people.
Mm-hmm.
Writers, producers, talent, comedians, and those, like, let's be real, like, you could have invited some cool people. You know what I mean? Like, nothing against the people that were in that photo, but so again, like, white people, white America, like, we love you. You can invite some Black people to your barbecue. If your son goes to school with a Black family, invite them to the barbecue. You know what I mean?
Also, show up at the barbecue when you get invited.
Show up to the
Absolutely.
barbecue.
Because that's a compliment.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Like, just do it. Just live, like, politics sometimes we think is like advocacy or it's voting or it's all these things. Like this shit just gets down to the way that you show up in the world.
100%.
Each
Show
and
up and
every
be a
day.
human being.
Yes.
Back to, I'm from Ohio, and all the shit that was happening with Springfield was such a nightmare and such a disaster. But like the way that Springfielders like rallied and started going to Haitian restaurants and started going to all these local businesses. And even, it's funny, like seeing the pictures of white people in spaces that we have designated as black, like breaks our brain. We treat as like heroism, you know?
Right.
And yet it's like, it's available to all of us, you know?
It's there.
And it's one of the things that I love so much about DC is you can't like it would be really hard for me to assemble like or go to a space and only find 50 white people.
Yeah.
Impossible.
Like whereas I can do it out of the drop of a hat in Columbus. Like I will spend a while out of Ohio and then go back and then be like, where did you all come from? Like how are there so many? How do you all know to be here right now? Like what on earth is going on? To your point of like, we are so, cities can be diverse on paper and then we will find our corner and stay there.
You guys have created something really special. I'm serious. Like I think it was brave of y'all to do, and someone had to start it, to be honest, start the conversation. The other thing about race too is it's like anything else. Like it's like a muscle. Like you have to work at it. You know? And we just kept ignoring it. We just kind of kept shoving it aside, and we don't want to bring it up, and we don't want to bring it up. And then you know what happens? Donald Trump happens.
That's right.
Because our muscle atrophies, and we're afraid to talk about this shit. And we just have to stop being afraid of it, you know? And I'm hoping it's not too late. Not to be a Debbie Downer. I hope it's not too late. Like I'm so glad you guys are doing it, but
I don't think it's too late.
Okay.
I don't think we would have done it if we thought it was too late either.
I think regardless of the outcome of the election, this is the beginning of a conversation, and it's gonna get uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And like that's okay. Like the history of America is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And is like full of triumphs and violence and like really beautiful coming together and really horrible tragedy. And like we just have to embrace all of it because like that's just like that's what we have to do.
Yeah.
Like, you gotta like step into the moment. This is the moment that we're in, and you know, like we hope that Vice President Harris wins. But
how can people get involved? What do you guys got cooking in the next 3 weeks? Buy the merch, number one.
Buy the merch.
Buy the merch.
WhiteDudesForHarris.com. Sign up. We have weekly organizing calls.
Yeah.
Over 10,000 folks so far.
No way.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Are non-whites allowed to be voyeurs, as I mentioned? Are we allowed to just
All are welcome.
Are we allowed to just dial in?
Please do.
Okay.
Please do. Come. All are welcome.
It's amazing.
What we're doing right now is we're pushing people to volunteer because at this point
Yeah,
in
it's
the
all that
election
matters.
cycle, that's the thing that matters. We got to like knock on doors. We got to make phone calls. We got to send
Where
texts.
is the white dudes for Kamala? Like, where are you guys going?
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania. Okay.
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania was,
Great.
you know, I mean, like Wisconsin,
Yeah. Michigan.
Yeah.
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 All
There's
those
a
Blue
lot.
wall.
Yeah, there's a it turns out that
Got numbers.
the swing states are places where it's good to send the white dudes.
Yeah.
So if you go to whitedudesforkamala.com, all that stuff is there.
White dudes for Harris.
White Dudes for Harris, and then all the organizing, all that good stuff's there. It's amazing. Congratulations.
All right, guys.
y'all.
Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much for being on.
It's been great. Thank you for having us.
God bless
Yeah.
you guys. We our merch idea was, this is going to be a Twigg and Jenkins shirt, but maybe it can be your guys' shirt. Was just
A collab. We can do a collab.
Co-brand that shit.
it's
Oh,
just
yes.
we value white people.
Yeah.
Yes.
We value white men.
We value white men.
Very
we value white men.
specifically, we value white men.
Twigg and Jenkins, we value white men.
You know what?
I wear the shit out of that, by the way.
We got a collab.
Yeah.
I think
doing
it's
this.
fun.
We're
I
We'll
think-
do a
It's our
drop.
first. It'll be our first collab.
Let's do it.
If we win, that's the drop.
Absolutely.
If we win Pennsylvania, that's our first collab. It's the drop, and I will personally. We'll get one of those launchers.
Oh, yeah.
and
T-shirt
just throw
cannons.
'em out into the crowd.
During the inauguration.
Honestly.
So good. Well, congrats, guys. Thank you again so much.
Thank you.
Thanks
all.
for having us.
Thank you.
Seriously, this is great.
Go Mets.